What is going on, my Super Sandwiches? Rhymestyle here, and today I'm joined by Black and Fist and Kwame, which is really difficult to say. For the last, 3 takes, I wanted to say their real names, and everybody knows their real names at this point. And today's topic is going to be very different and interesting in regards to the return of Dragon Ball. Now, the reason, or I guess where this topic came from, what sparked it, was back in 2013, this is a rumor that everybody has heard about, and that was originally that Dragon Ball Z was going to come back with 200 episodes. And I remember when the community reacted to this back then, it was kind of all over the place. Some people were happy, some people were unhappy, and some people were just kind of neutral and whatever. I was on the opposite end of the happy side. I was on the unhappy side. I remember originally I said, well, if Dragon Ball Z comes back, it risks taking the same path that Dragon Ball GT took, which wasn't that great in execution. And just overall, it felt kind of forced and wasn't that great, which is why a lot of us don't really like Dragon Ball GT. So originally, when I heard that rumor back in 2013, I was kind of like, nah, I'd rather not. Dragon Ball Z is great. It ended great. Let's just leave it as is and focus on new stuff. Maybe focus on games, and that's about it. But nothing really beyond that. And then our minds were blown months later when we saw Battle of Gods come back. Then Resurrection came out, Resurrection F came out, and then Dragon Ball Super. So basically, we were in this renaissance, as Kwame calls it, where Dragon Ball was back. And now that it's actually back, the reaction is all over the place once again. A lot of people are happy, a lot of people are unhappy, because some people aren't exactly fans of Dragon Ball Super, some people are, some people like the game, some people don't. You get the picture. So the reason why we want to do this video today is to see what the community thinks about the return of Dragon Ball. Was it a good idea? Should they have left it where it ended back in the 90s, or I guess late 2000s if you watched it in the early 2000s, if that's where you watched it? Or is it great that it came back? Let's start with Kwame. Kwame, what do you think?
Well, Dino, I have very mixed opinions on this issue.
Right.
I mean, I've always been a believer that if you're going to bring something back, make it equal to or better than what it previously was. And with Super, I do like what it's adding. Obviously, I have my mixed opinions about the Resurrection of F and Battle of Gods arcs. But when it comes to the new content, I'm anticipating it, and I'm glad it's back in general. Because not only does it help our channels, but it also brings in a brand new base of fans to interact and talk about the series. So that's one thing that really helps talking about Dragon Ball. I mean, Black and Fist and I can relate to, when we were thinking of topics, when the series was done. And it was a little bit harder. And in terms of energy and in terms of bringing in new people who would enjoy the series, I definitely like it. However, there is a con to this, and it would be if the series flops, it flops. And I just want to say really quickly that if you look at the Son Goku and his friends return movement, now obviously when you look at Battle of Gods, Xenoverse, and when you look at Dragon Ball Super and Resurrection F, you could think about that little thing as it being squashed, but to just think that when Son Goku and his friends return first came out, there was a huge surge. And Dino, you probably remember how many people were really excited when that special came out. And it never came out in English, but people were just so happy Dragon Ball was back. And I think that the fact that it's back makes it better, but just do it right.
Right. And we also gotta thank, in case you guys missed the video I did with Geekdom this week, we gotta thank Dragon Ball Evolution for this, because I remember Toriyama, well, I don't remember, I remember, but Toriyama came out with a statement recently saying that certain things pissed him off in the past. One of those things was Dragon Ball Evolution, and it kind of got him to come back to the series. He also commented on how he wasn't that happy with the quality of Dragon Ball Super, which could lead into a better quality with the Shampoo arc. But overall, it's just been all over the place. It's does the, I guess, quality of Dragon Ball Super piss you off as a fan? Yes or no? And why? And comment that below. But ultimately, when it comes down to me, I'm happy. I'm happy as hell. I will say that. Honestly, they could bring back Dragon Ball GT 2.0 tomorrow, and I will still be happy just because it's more Dragon Ball content. Ultimately, there's certain things that we'll be fans of and we won't be fans of. But when it comes down to Dragon Ball, we will always enjoy that current era. And the fact that, I'm really leaving Dragon Ball the same way I did when I was a kid makes me excited as a fan. We're getting games every single year, which is awesome, especially with things like Xenoverse, which, explores different eras of it, as well as Dragon Ball Z Project Future, which is coming out this year, which is also going to explore a different era of it. It's just cool to live Dragon Ball no matter how it's being, I guess, pushed out, if that makes sense. So as long as we keep getting Dragon Ball, I'm always going to satisfy. But at the same time, there's also that part of me that's like, well, it should be better. Well, I mean, that's normal. You're always going to be that fan that's that wants the best for this series. Even though Dragon Ball is not my favorite anime of all time, I do love it, and I always wanted it, the best. I would love for Madhouse to animate it, for example. I would love for Toriyama to bring back an actual manga that he does on a weekly basis, so it's more consistent, it makes more sense, and the story is more portrayed of how he wants to put it out. But at the same time, I also don't mind the way if it's done this way, where Toei's doing the anime, Toyotaro's doing the manga, just because it's more Dragon Ball content, if that makes sense. What do you think about that, Kwame?
Well, in terms of all of that stuff, I mean, I think that Toriyama, personally, because of his age, I don't think it would be in his best interest to put that much effort into it. And honestly,
I agree.
Toriyama has kind of said before that, you know, he's kind of taken a break from Dragon Ball.
Right.
And it's very ironic. Dino, you have no idea how ironic it is for Dragon Ball Evolution to be one of the reasons why, you know, we got all this new Dragon Ball content.
Yep.
Who would have thought that? So when you look at it like that, I'm really happy for all of it, but I think that Toriyama's role should just kind of be like the head of what goes on in the story, and he should maximize that while allowing Toyotaro and the others to take over, because honestly, if Toriyama is devoting 100% of his time to it, there's not going to be as much of, I guess you could say, an editing process that could go on, which could actually help the story.
Right. Well, the reason why I even brought that up in the first place was just because that's the one, I guess, complaint you could say about the Dragon Ball community today. It's just people don't necessarily like the inconsistencies. People don't like the quality of the anime because, you know, Toei is just all over the place with how they're doing the series. The games are just kind of like all over the place as well. There's always that one thing that fans of the series aren't going to like. But end of the day, are you happy that it's back? That's the question I'm asking to the viewers of this video. Black and Chris, you've been quiet. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I think I'm one of those fans that I understand all the faults that Super has had technically with its animation. I think one of the biggest flaws that Super had, honestly, in the first place, was retelling the movies at all. But I'm one of those fans that just is genuinely just ecstatic that we got all this stuff anyway. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I genuinely am just like, more Dragon Ball, more like I know fans, like other fans out there, like Mr. Fusion, Hell Zeon. These guys maybe would have preferred it if Dragon Ball had just ended, but I'm sorry, I'm one of those fans who's like, the more the merrier, and that's always been my mentality.
Exactly.
And maybe sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, but I think that I am not hammering all my judgment in on Super yet, because I've said this before, and to Quaman and Geekdom 101 is, I've enjoyed a lot of the new content, actually all the new content in Dragon Ball Super. I think where Super mostly blunders is with the movie retellings. But if they continue to do such a good job with the new material, which is it's going to be from this point forward, since they're done with retelling the movies, then I can't wait. And I'm not really going to rein in my total judging on Dragon Ball Super until we see that new arc, because in my opinion, Dragon Ball Super should have started at this point we're at right now anyway.
It should.
So yeah, and so to me, it's kind of, I think it's kind of unfortunate that it had to end, like, you know, had to be this way. But to me, it's almost like this is finally where Dragon Ball Super is finally beginning, at least in my mind. Of course, I've enjoyed both of the movies, Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. I think they were both great. I think Xenoverse, I think, is actually one of the more unique. Obviously, it's one of the most unique Dragon Ball games to ever come out, and I think it sets a good precedent, because they're going to sequel that game. Obviously.
Yeah, of course, 100%.
Yeah, obviously. And I think that...
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just think that Xenoverse is a good platform. It's a good, like, benchmark to build upon that, because Xenoverse wasn't perfect, but they could definitely build upon that game to keep making it more and more interesting. And it's a lot more unique and special than you could say some of the previous games, which, I mean, some of the previous games were looked on with a lot of people liked them, and of course there were some great games back in the day. But, you know, like everything else, like video games, everything evolves, and Dragon Ball video games have kind of been stuck at a certain point. That they haven't been changing too much, and I think Xenoverse finally is bringing that new thing to Dragon Ball video games that it severely needed to evolve with the times. And so I think that's the biggest thing with Xenoverse, and I think that's why Xenoverse got the success it did get, by the way.
Right.
Well, Black and Fist, let me ask you, Rhymestyle, if I could ask really quickly, Black and Fist, to what degree do you and Rhymestyle feel the Yosun Goku special played in ultimately all of these new events?
the Yosun Goku and his friends return thing, I'm not sure that actually did have much of an effect on what is going on now. I think that I think Toriyama was still very much thinking that Dragon Ball was behind him at that time. I mean, like, Yosun Goku was based on some of Toriyama's story ideas, but I don't really think Yosun Goku was the spark. If anything was the spark of what's going on right now, it's Battle of Gods, not Yosun Goku.
What I was going to say is I was never a fan of Yosun Goku. I didn't like it. I watched it a couple times. I never really... I know what it was. I couldn't enjoy it, but what I did enjoy from that same era was the episode of Bardock, because that came out around the same time, didn't it? 2011, I think.
Yep.
And that made me enjoy the quote-unquote unofficial Return of Dragon Ball more, because that was awesome. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, when it comes to Dragon Ball, the more content we get, the better. That's just what it is. I was talking to one of my friends a while ago, and I remember he said, dude, they could redo the original arcs, Buu Saga, Saiyan Saga, Frieza Saga, Cell Saga, in a movie format, and we would watch it. And it's true, we would. Again, the more Dragon Ball we get, the better. And it's just because it's just an awesome series. You feel great while watching it. Now, we will be critical of it. We will always be critical of it.
One thing I will say, though. Oh, sorry, Dino. One thing I will say, though, is I would, of course, watch, maybe if they make movie versions of the Frieza, Cell, Buu arcs and everything. And I think it has potential to be interesting. But most of all, I think that what Dragon Ball needs is not to retell things. It's to go into new directions, which is something that, which is why I think that it was a mistake to do what they did with Super. But, I mean, I'm not saying that, a Cell movie, for instance, can't be interesting. Of course it can be interesting. But instead of a Cell movie, why not make a movie on a completely uncharted subject? True. Maybe something that takes Dragon Ball into new territories, and I think that would be more interesting.
Right. Well, I will point out what I heard was the reason why Super was redone was because they wanted the story to flow better, which is kind of stupid because we could just watch the two movies and watch the arc. The thing is the Frieza movie, the Resurrection F movie, it feels like a filler moment. Like, they could have revealed Super Saiyan got Super Saiyan in the Champa arc. Like, everything that happens in that movie could be completely ignored. You would never know it happened. But it's also entertaining to watch. Like, it was a really fun movie to watch, but story-wise, it was kind of meh. So I feel like, honestly, they could have gone from Battle of Gods, the movie, to Resurrection F, to the Champa arc in anime format easily. But at the same time, I understand what they're doing. Honestly, it comes down to they wanted to make money in DVD format, so it all fits together. Because at the end of the day, we'll all buy the DVDs. Well, some of us will. Since the anime community tends to not buy the product usually, but you get the point. The reason why it was done like that is to make it flow better, I guess. But thing is ultimately when it comes out to it, I think we can all agree here, the more Dragon Ball we get, the better. And after that, we'll be critical of it, I guess. So the question we want to ask you guys, to the people watching, is was it a mistake for Dragon Ball to come back? Yes or no? Why or why not? Comment below. So before we end this, is there anything else you both want to say?
I mean, honestly, I'm ultimately happy that Dragon Ball's back. I think it's bringing a lot of new territories, but at the same time, I do think that when you're creating a new series, as evidenced with Juan talking about GT, you can kind of go through that whole pressure of trying to live up to past expectations, and that's one of the reasons GT flopped. Yep. And I think that if Super could really engage, the audience with this new arc, I think they could probably go in another direction.
I mean, I will say this, even if the Super arc with Champa is incredible, absolutely amazing, ultimately, I think when it comes down to it, when you look at the series overall, I don't think we'll ever compare to Dragon Ball Z, because DBZ was the series that first captured our hearts. And because of that, it will always have the #1 spot in our heart when it comes down to what's the best of the whole series. Like, that's always going to be fact. So I feel like with something like that, it's doomed from the start. But at the end of the day, you should still enjoy while the journey's happening, which is basically what we've been doing. Like, there is a reason why a lot of us Dragon Ball YouTubers enjoy certain things that aren't really quote-unquote enjoyable according to other people. Like, why do you like Super? The animation sucks. Well, like I said, it's fun to watch. Well, Resurrection F arc was a little meh, but for the most part, it's fun to watch. It's fun to play the games. It's just enjoyable to be in the community. It's fun to get the merchandise. That's why we like the stuff. But ultimately, when you come down to it, it's not perfect. But still, it's still Dragon Ball, which is kind of the message that we want to send out there to see what the community says. So that's kind of like how I feel about it. And I don't know if you guys agree or not, but your own opinions, I guess, post in the comments below. Black Fist, you want to say anything else before we end this too?
No, I think I've laid out my opinions pretty well out here. I just, like I said before, I'm happy that Dragon Ball is back. I'm hoping that more stories are coming down the line. And it honestly, if I will say this, if Dragon Ball Super does turn out to be completely terrible and everything and blah, 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 which I don't think it will be, by the way. I don't think the new arc will be. But if it does, I guess I would see an end to it, even though I would prefer more content. I would see, I guess it would be better for it to end. But, as I said before, if it continues to do great and everything, I'm just one of those fans who wants more. And I can't help it. I can't help it. I just want more. And I some other fans, maybe stronger willed than me, are going to be like, no, we should end it and just leave it where it is. But I'm always, nope, I just want more. I just want more.
It's funny just because, like I said, the only reason why I want to do this video is because I originally was not a fan of continuing the series. I wanted to end where it ended. But now that we're in this era, I'm enjoying every second of it. And I'm glad it came back. And I was myself wrong. So if they even do Dragon Ball Ultra in 3 years or whatever, if it ends up being terrible, I'll still go through the experience. Because, again, we can watch something now and then kind of rate it and judge it later depending on how well it works down the line. But while it's happening, enjoy the journey. So, yeah. Anyways, so let us know what you guys think about the return of Dragon Ball. Any questions, comments, feedback, drop it below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. Check out both Black Fist and Quaman. And Quaman, you know what to do.
So guys, that has been our video for today. Overall, we all like Dragon Ball Super because it gives us video topics and because of the fact that it's a brand new series with a lot of hope. So with that said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and most importantly, over everything else, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and to put hashtag Clayton
in the comment section below. Also, I'll point out, it's not about just doing video topics. That's just a bonus. But I want to kind of toss it out there. It's not about just being a YouTuber in the Dragon Ball community, although it adds to it, but whatever. All right, guys. See you guys in the comment section below.